Welcome back to Holistic Healing Space, everyone. I'm your host, Holly, and today I have a special guest. His name is Leigh. He's a good friend of mine, and he runs an online resource for the community called the HOPE Manifesto, all around mental health. It's a fabulous resource. He's also a professional golfer and a performance mentor. And in this episode, we talk deeply about mental health, namely depression. We talk about our own experiences and how depression can look for different people, what it actually means, medication, its implications, the side effects, and we also share some of the tools that we've used to help navigate through our life journey. We hope you find our chat helpful. So Leigh, I know that you are really, really deep into mental health and have a really deep understanding that I really resonate with, and I think it's something that a lot of people benefit from, your knowledge and your wisdom and what you've been through. And I know you have an amazing little Instagram page called the HOPE Manifesto, which gives so much hope to people and so much knowledge, and I think it's amazing. Do you want to tell us about it?
It's just funny because it's kind of like, it's almost got an identity of its own. It's purely just started as a place for me to, because I've always been interested in writing poetry, quotes, just all that sort of real, genuine life experience stuff. And I had a little blog when I was doing my golf a few years ago when I was starting that. And then I've always been someone who journaled ever since I was young. So even though I hated English at school, I now love writing. But yeah, it just sort of started out as almost more like a cathartic release and therapy for me. And then there's just one or two things that I shared when I was doing the golf blog that was like, that then people resonated with, or then started talking to me about their mental health challenges, that it was like something I might have said just made sense of something that was in their head, or just connected a few dots that they hadn't put together. And even some of them made them realize like, oh, okay, no, maybe I've actually got something I need to talk about here, or someone I need to go see about this. Also because they weren't alone.
Yeah.
And so I guess that was then a nice bit of motivation to start doing a little bit more publicly, because I always felt comfortable, for whatever reason, talking about my experiences. Not even for validation or comfort or support. It was just like, well, it's just my experience, it's me, I'm happy to share it. And yeah, I've got no idea why I was comfortable doing that, because I also been such an introvert my whole life.
Yep.
And hate public speaking, hate doing all this. But then that most raw, authentic stuff, it was just like, yeah, I'm happy, who wants to know? Like,
yeah,
it's completely opposite, but also feels 100% me.
Yeah, and I think that's where we resonate a bit, because I'm very similar. It's like, it's almost like you do it because you have this deep feeling that other people are going through it too. And it's like that purpose becomes greater than the ego, which we're talking about too, of actually being a bit worried about what people are going to think.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess it started with that, and then it just became, I thought, especially during the lockdowns, I was spending a lot of time going through sort of social media, trying to connect with either positive pages or the right people who were going to help my understanding grow and get more knowledge and change my perception and experiences. And it just felt like hard work trying to find that and scroll through everything else that pops up. That then I wanted that to be, okay, well, I've done the hard work in finding it. Now I can just create a nice big profile for, oh, you need someone to go, look, just go here and you'll find it all. And then you can be on your merry way. And so, yeah, it's kind of just become a bit of a release and a resource. But it's also like, if nobody was to ever read it, nobody was seeing it, probably still keep doing it anyway, because it's at the end of the day, it's what feels good for me and is helping me.
And I think that's where it's so authentic and really inspiring for people to offer some deeper truths when it comes to mental health and feeling comfortable. Because I think we spoke about, before we started the podcast, about how so many people, me included in the past, were just so reluctant to share emotions, and you know, that stigma of feeling like you're weak, or you know, that vulnerability is actually kind of scary. Yeah,
and that's the thing. I feel like I don't know if I've ever really felt that it was weak to feel or anything. Like, I definitely felt out of place.
Yep.
But I don't know if it ever felt like it was wrong or weak or anything. Like, I think
it's not.
Yeah, like, so I think I've never really resonated with that, but then everyone else did. So then when I was emotional, it was just like there was very few people who could understand me when I was younger.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think a lot of people feel that way, don't they? It's like they don't know who they can trust almost, or with their being vulnerable and who they can talk to. But there's a lot of layers to that, isn't there? Like what we've been through.
Yeah. And I guess that ties in with what I was saying before with like the stat I heard about men, and that ties into masculinity and everything else. But yeah, what is like 41% of men regret speaking up.
I can't believe it when you said that. Regret, like that's a pretty interesting.
It's one of the strongest emotions you can feel.
Yeah, so true.
But it's like, all the messaging around mental health is always, speak up and all that. Yet when people do, they don't have the support. So then that only reaffirms them shutting down, locking themselves away, locking their feelings away, and that's when everything
hits the fan.
Yeah.
That's why pages like yours, the HOPE Manifesto, is so great. Particularly, I'm not saying particularly for males, because females go through it too, but to have that masculine energy out there promoting that is really, really powerful. Because I feel like, maybe I'm generalising, but I do feel like it can be really difficult for men because there is this kind of conditioning about being tough and we can't just sit and really feel and talk. And I think as females are a bit more emotional and it's a bit more acceptable.
And that's thing. And it's like everyone's got the masculine and feminine balance within them. Just figuring out what is the right balance for you. But
I love that.
All the emotions are definitely from the feminine, and even in culture these days it's like it's still talked down, dismissed, everything like that. It's all about like this toxic masculinity movement. But it's like, well, okay, it's toxic to be masculine, but then it's also still not right to be feminine. So what the hell are we supposed to do?
So confusing.
It's like, what the hell are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going through that too, like finding that balance so they're masculine and feminine. And you see a lot of women out there more in their masculine, and I used to be one of them. And a lot of men just not.
That's what this like boss bitch hustle culture is creating as well. Is it productive, or is it just getting unhealthily into their masculine?
Yeah, that's so true.
Because men aren't in their healthy masculine, so somebody has to step into it.
That is so true. Yeah, it's just finding that balance. And I think, we spoke about before, like society is quite imbalanced in many aspects. And I think we're all just trying to find our feet and scramble through the untruths and our conditioning and a broken system, like you mentioned, and just trying to think, well, who am I and what makes me happy? And no wonder, like, depression is so high. I don't even know how high it is, but it's very high at the moment, isn't it?
Well, I don't think we'll ever hear the actual stats, because it's only like, what was it? Well, it's 1 in 5 people in Australia had mental health.
I reckon it's more though.
That was before COVID and everything else.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I don't think we'll ever know the actual stats, because that'll never come out. But we just have to see everything's on the incline, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even just if you actually have a conversation with a stranger.
Yeah.
The amount of times that you'll say something about mental health and they'll either connect or agree, and it's just like, okay, so if everyone I'm talking to has experienced something, like,
that's so true.
It's very rare to find someone who's never had any mental health issues ever.
I feel like if they say that, they're probably lying to a level, you know?
Either that, or they're just unaware, or...
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess awareness, that's a big one too. So, like, I know we kind of, we've spoken a lot about depression. It's kind of just the topic that kind of came up for us, wasn't it? Depression in terms of mental health. And that can mean so many things. Like, sometimes I don't even really know what that means, if that makes sense. 100%.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And it's like, because what was it? It was just like, sitting around having a coffee, and then all of a sudden we just dive straight into a conversation about anxiety, depression, burnout.
Yeah.
It's like,
keep it high vibe.
Just normal Sunday morning chats.
Yeah, and I think that's nice. So when you meet someone who can go on that level with you. But yeah, like, I'm interested to hear what you would actually describe as depression, or what your experience has been, if you don't mind sharing.
I feel like it's my ideas and the way I describe it has changed so much over the years. And it's like, I still remember, like, I think I was always a pretty anxious kid. And I kind of just got put to being shy, introverted, everything like that.
Same as me.
Yeah. It's like the more I look back on it now, I realise it's like, there was a lot of anxiety there, like, proper anxiety. Like almost crippling at times.
Yep.
But then, during school, or was it sort of year 8, year 9, there was 2 people, like one in my year and one in my brother's year, a few years older than me, who passed away. And that was probably the start of me having to grow up and mature to try and cope with life, but then also still trying to figure out, well, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Like, what's purpose? What is happening? Why do people die? Obviously, there was a lot of emotions, a lot of guilt, a lot of different things that you sort of experience with grieving and all that. But I think it was only multiplied by just sort of social anxieties. Like, what was I, like 14, 15 at the time? So it's all the adolescence, all the teenage pressures, trying to fit in, trying to talk to girls, all those sorts of things. And it's just like, there was just so much going on. And so I feel like that was when the cracks started to show. But even still, I was always adamant that I was not depressed. Anxiety even wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah, there was a deeper meaning.
Yeah, it was just like, it was weird. I thought anxiety was, like people having panic attacks, not being able to walk out of the house, like all that. And it was like, well, I was still high functioning. I was still straight A's at school. I was still doing elite golf. I was doing so much. But then, as I was slowly getting so miserable on the daily and just not wanting to really do anything and didn't see the purpose in school, because why am I doing this? Because the person just passed away and I'm feeling all these emotions, and it's like, well, like, what's going on here? Why am I so focused about something that is so menial when... Yeah, there's so much bigger stuff, so much bigger picture things going on.
Bigger picture, yeah.
Especially as well, because... in year 9, when it was the person in my brother's year level, he was kind of like a second brother to me. So everyone else at school knew who he was, because he was in year 12. He was like vice captain of the school at the time. So it sort of rocked everyone. But still, for everyone else the next day, it was like life was just going on. And I'm like, my world's been turned upside down again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre. That was when it really started to go downhill that year. And then I think it went next level when I had to have like a surgery on my toe that year, and I had to spend a couple of weeks at home, and all of a sudden I was just isolated and all that, and people were still messaging and popping around and whatever, but all of a sudden it was like my world had just completely changed, and I was just had this really deep sadness and like almost pain, but it was also just this broad, vague, didn't really know where it was coming from, didn't know why I wasn't like really enjoying life. But even still, when that was happening, I would have, because I think I started seeing like the school psychologist in year 8 just to try and help with the grief and understand it, but I was still adamant that no, I'm not depressed, I'm not anything like that. Probably wasn't really until when I started doing psychology in senior school, whether it was year 10 or year 11, whenever it was, and obviously everyone starts diagnosing themselves with different things when they're studying psychology. But it was then, just realised, like, as we got to more mental health and anxiety, depression there, it's just like something just shifted. It was like, oh, actually, like, I've got this massive wall up here. Maybe I am struggling more than I realised. And then that was when the conversation, even with the school therapist, changed. It was like, okay, yeah, maybe there is something more going on here. And that's when I started seeing a psychologist outside of school as well. But I feel like it was really what was going on was a lot of burnout and anxiety that then manifested into depressive states.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it was just periods of when it was too overwhelming that you'd run out of energy, you just wouldn't want to really take part in society for the day.
Yeah.
But then when you have a little bit of a rest and whatever, all of a sudden it feels like it's lifted and you're not doing too badly. And then I just go into the same routines, do it all again, and then burn out again. And so I felt like I was just having waves of, depression, all that. But really, the more I got on, the more I worked through it, it became clear that anxiety and burnout was more the issue.
So relate to you.
And it was even like probably when I started on antidepressants. And that wasn't until 2016.
Yeah.
So this is still 5-6 years after I'd really started therapy. As I started the medication, I even remember feeling like I was working part-time in the restaurant, and after a few weeks after I started, when they were clearly starting to take effect, like I was driving to work and it's like, oh, I don't have like the butterflies in my stomach. I was like, oh, maybe it actually has just been a lot of anxiety there. It was like when it finally disappeared, I realised it had been there.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you make of that? So when you look at that now, the butterflies disappearing, can you kind of identify what those butterflies were?
Well, I think then it was a lot of working, sort of like having to think on my feet, be social, serving customers, serving different people, having to do lots of different conversations. Like all that stuff was not natural to me. And it was, and like that's when I always swore I would never work in hospitality, or like my brother was working in the restaurant while I was at school, and I swore, I'll never do this, I'll find something else. Couldn't think of anything worse. And now I'm sitting here as well. I've almost been in the restaurant for 10 years.
There you go.
Because it almost became, it was like, okay, well, this is actually working on all the things that I know I'm not good at. So I kind of need to stay there to keep working on it.
Yeah, push
and
yourself
get those
out of your comfort
skills.
zone. Yeah.
But at the same time, it felt nerve-wracking. And talking to people now that who worked with me back then, they would say, I always used to look flustered or anything. Even if I didn't really feel it.
Yeah.
Even if I was just sort of focused, busy doing that, I would look more flustered than other people were.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just funny, like until that disappears, you don't realise. It's like, oh, that was actually there.
So it's crazy what we carry around without realising, isn't it, until we actually work on it. I was wanting to touch a bit, if you want to, on the burnout and anxiety, because I feel like that's such a big thing in society. Like I think a lot of people feel that. I definitely can so much relate to what you've just said.
Yep.
And I feel like it's such a big thing, like the way we burn ourselves out and the anxiety we carry, and we have to work through it and understand what it is and why we push ourselves. But I'm not blaming society, but I do feel like we do live in a society that does condition us a bit to push and strive, and we don't really stop and process. We're always striving, and you really have to set your boundaries and go, no, I need to sit with myself and take a step back sometimes.
Yep. It's weird, and I feel like it's a generational thing as well. Like,
oh, for sure,
each generation has the different messaging and the different ideas on what they're supposed to do. Like how many of our parents were working pretty much straight out of school and got their homes, got their families, all this sort of stuff set up, whereas now we're all told, shoot for the stars and blah blah blah. It's almost like don't work till the 9 to 5. You don't have to work hard, you can still get everything coming in without doing the work. And it's just like the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. That okay, well, where's the right balance?
Yeah,
I think you've got to try different things. Yeah, because I feel like so much of us, we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, and that's where a lot of the burnout comes from, because it's like it's clearly your body and your mind are telling you something. Yep. That it's either you're doing too much or you're doing something that's not right, that's not aligned to your values.
So true. I think alignment's such a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of it for me as well, where the depression and anxiety was sort of hung around for so long, was because I wasn't getting to the core of what was right for me and what my values were. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I can really relate to that too. It's like, what is right for you? Because we're all different, we're all different makeups. And I think I was just a bit of a follower growing up, it's like, I better do this and I better be good at school, and then I'll go to university and do this and I'll work hard, and until I woke up to like, wow, did I actually really look at that being what was right for me? Or was I just doing what I was told? So it's, I think alignment, knowing yourself is really important, and it can be harder or easier for people depending on their life journey, I guess. But I think we spoke about the like depression being really a lot about, not for everybody, but alignment, knowing who you are and what makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, the book sitting in front of us, Lost Connections, by Johann Hari, like, that was a massive game changer for me, just because it talks about connection and disconnection as, like, almost the most important issue, symptom, like, reason that things go astray and we feel off, because it's just, okay, well, there's it's disconnection from the meaningful work, from the values, from family, community, all these little things that just provide safety, provide purpose. Like, it's just some of the most primitive things, but until you actually break it down and address it all in your own life and sit with yourself to try and figure it out, you keep going through the motions, because you've got to keep participating in society as well.
That's so true.
It's the hardest thing about actually having the time to sit down and work on yourself, because the world doesn't stop around you.
That's so true.
But something has got to give.
Yeah.
Whereas so many people, they want to do the work, but they don't allow the time for something to sacrifice, to stop. They still try and hold on to everything, and then it's like, oh yeah, and then I'll add the work I'm doing on top of that. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
It's like and I think we spoke about this before, do you mean? It's like you're scared to let go of what you know to bring in something new, and you can make excuses. I've watched myself 100 times go, oh no, I can't do that, I don't have time. Like, hold on a second. What's more important, my health, my mental health, or being busy and being swept away by what society wants me to do? And I think even the other day, like, I had some appointments and I felt really unwell. I was just like, I was like, I have to cancel them. In the past, I'd feel terrible, like, for cancelling things, but now it's like, no, I actually really need to listen to myself.
Yeah. It's funny how many times people feel, whether it's appointments or even just like social catch-ups or things, that people will either go through with it when they're like something's come up, like they're tired or they're just not feeling it for whatever reason, and yet people will either go through it or they'll just apologise because they need a change and whatever. But it's the best thing you can do is just honour what you need and actually understand what you need. You're better off filling your own cup than being selfish, because then that actually allows you to be more selfless. That
is so true. And I think that's a big thing for many people, or the people that I guess I'm aligned with, because I guess, I don't know about you, but for me, people pleasing was a big part of my journey, like undoing that and realising that it's good to have healthy boundaries with people, and you can say no and you're not going to hurt people's feelings, and realising, that it's not selfish to look after yourself. It's not selfish, but it's like we can run around so much after other people and get depleted. And I think even in the whole mainstream 9 to 5, I'm not saying it's bad, it's not for everybody though. And I think we can just burn ourselves out so quickly and almost like chase materialism and, just look at kind of the money package and put our health second and put, materialistic stuff first. And then we're like, then we get sick and we're like, how did I get here?
It's so funny, like, and especially like about that getting sick as well. It's literally like your body is trying to tell you something. Like anxiety, depression, all the mental health stuff, it is your body's
screaming at you.
Yeah, screaming, because it's been whispering to you, but now it's screaming at you.
Yes.
That something's wrong, something's not right. And it's the same as what Johann Hari talks about in the book as well, like even nausea. Like when you're sick, you need your nausea to understand what's going wrong, what's happening. You need to stop and get better and change something, or else you're going to die. You're like, it's
100%. I love that. It's like, I remember this one sentence that one of my mentors said. He's like, your body is a reflection of your consciousness. And it just makes you realise, doesn't it? Like, your body is connected to you and your thoughts and your alignment. And if we just listen to that more, it'd be great if more doctors kind of said that to you. But anyway, it's like, if we just realise that it's a message for us to do some deeper work and know ourselves better. And I know that very well. Like, it's...
And I think that ties as well into sort of the spiritual and the metaphysical. And I think that's where a lot of people sort of lose interest, because, like, whether they don't quite resonate with that. And I completely understand, because I never used to as well. And even still, I'm more... I'll always be skeptical until I feel it and experience for myself.
Totally.
And then I can learn. But it's just, there's just, your body is always trying to help you, protect you, and you've just got to listen to it and see what it's trying to say. Don't force it to fit into any mould. Just go back to what you were as a kid.
I love that.
What did you enjoy? What did you want to do?
And you've got to do that sometimes. You've got to go all the way back, haven't you? Back to basics and... and just go, what makes me happy, what brings me joy, without thinking of all the adult... You've got to think about the adult things, but without kind of thinking about all the stresses of life. Like, I'm actually allowed to be happy. I'm actually allowed to live life the way I want to live as well.
You're allowed to enjoy the stupid things. Like, I still enjoy playing my Game Boy every so often. Just because,
on you.
You know what? How good's Pokemon? But then there's other times like, okay, I need to be an adult here. I need to pay my bills. So I need to I still need to take part in life.
That balance. I wanted to mention depression and touch on medication a little bit.
Well, I guess my journey with medication, like, I'm against...
It's not so much medication, actually. It's the way it's been pushed, I think, that irritates me.
Like, there's definitely, like, things with the medication that aren't great either. There's so much of the research that was fudged and... like, just wasn't actually, the real results weren't shown, and then they've kind of run with it, even like the whole even just serotonin's responsibility in mental health, like it was never really proven, so then it couldn't actually be disproved.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre. But it's also like, for me, I was on sertraline, Zoloft, and it served a purpose.
Yep.
But I also know I'll never go back on it, and I'll never touch it again.
Yep.
Because like it was very much like a last resort for me.
But sometimes you just need that something to get you to a stable place.
It was like the circuit breaker to allow me to actually do the work.
That makes sense, yeah.
It was like, I really felt so, like, for 5, 6, 7 years of trying to do CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and whatnot, trying to get into breathwork, meditation, all these things, and I just couldn't sit with myself, couldn't actually change any of the cycles. So I was just always burning out every 2-3 months, and like the period between burnouts got bigger, but then also each time I got into a depressive state, it got sort of lower and lower. So I felt like I almost felt like I was reaching a new rock bottom each time.
I can relate to that.
And so I kind of just got to the point where I was like, well, I've got to try something else.
Yep.
Because I don't know how much longer I can go on like this.
Yep.
Like also I was never suicidal, but I could absolutely understand why people were. There were a couple of times where it was like, okay, I could understand. And for whatever reason, I never was.
Yep.
And that's also where kind of the HOPE Manifesto kind of came from, because it was just that little, like, always just had this like core belief, starseed, whatever you call it, there was always this little bit of hope that it will, I can't see how, but it will get better. It won't be like this forever.
Yep.
And I just had to there was times where like that was literally all I had, and then eventually everything else going in life would change, and I was like, okay, I can get back into participating again. Yeah, I still remember even when the day I took my first one, like, and it's a slow acting. It was going to take 5-6 weeks before I even started to feel it, but I was so nervous and I was almost shaking taking it. Also, because it was such a long commitment, like I had to be on it for at least 6 months, 12 months to see if it would...
To see the difference.
To see if it would actually be, taking effect too. But so it served its purpose, but it came with side effects. Came with the, also feeling like I was losing myself a little bit, because I was always so emotional, almost impulsive. Yeah. That... obviously it neutralised everything, so I wouldn't feel as low, but then I wouldn't feel as high. Yeah. So I just wasn't as emotional, and then so the way I was making decisions had to change, because I didn't have either the as strong a gut instincts or anything like that. So it did feel like I lost myself a little bit. I still distinctly remember being worried about that as I was on them.
I feel like that's very common, what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah. But I realised as well, it's like, okay, well, it was like the fog lifted, so I could sit with my thoughts without reacting and running away as much as I was previously, to the point where I couldn't actually work on them because they were too painful. Yeah. Emotions are really interesting, aren't they? Like, they can be overwhelming at times, really overwhelming. Yeah. And I often wonder, I don't know about you, but I wonder why sometimes they're so overwhelming. And I look at my past and I feel like I was always too scared to really face them. I was really quite scared. And I like what you said, I'm sorry, about the medication, because I feel, everyone's different. This is just my opinion. I feel like it definitely serves a purpose for sometimes where you're at. But to me, it's when people are on them for a prolonged period of time, it kind of just becomes another kind of avoidance tactic, or not avoidance tactic, but almost a way to keep you on the same kind of wavelength. Well, that's the thing. It's like, if people keep upping the dose, it's like, okay, well, it's like something still isn't being addressed here. Your body's trying to tell you something. Yeah,
you're not addressing the underlying issue.
Yeah.
And it's like, like you said, the emotions will be overwhelming. You just need something to take the edge off. But then you're like, you were like, right, I've got to go deeper with this now. I actually have to excavate what's happening. And it makes me just wonder, wow, how much... I'm talking about myself, not you, how much I obviously shoved down for such a long time and didn't know how to deal with. And then when it's almost like, for me, it was a bit of a volcano, I kind of just erupted. I was like, oh my God, all these emotions, what do I do with them,
Exactly.
But it can be really scary, particularly if you haven't had the tools, or you don't know how to self-soothe in a healthy way. For me, it was like eating. I had eating disorders. That was my way of soothing myself, medicating myself, was through food,
And absolutely. And also, where would you have learnt those skills?
Through your page. The HOPE Manifesto.
It's like, well, you've been living for a fair few years before that, so like where we like that's
totally.
that's
See?
the thing.
Needed you sooner. Yeah.
It's like, I guess that's where it's like, what we were talking about before, there's such little preventative, or there is a lot of preventative stuff that just doesn't get the attention and the media time.
Yeah.
Whereas a whole system's based around crisis management, and that's also much more expensive.
Yeah. And you wonder about that. I do wonder about the whole system and how it's set up, because if we really cared about people, we'd do it differently. We would actually be more preventative and... You know, but then there's the other side of it. You have to actually want to do the work. You can always make excuses, and I've made plenty.
That's the thing, though. I feel like there's two questions that I'm completely stumped on with, like, mental health and society. And it's like, how do we reinvent the system? Because it's also, logistically, there's only so much you can do without burning everything to the ground and damaging everyone along the way.
Yeah,
like
point.
You've got to be a realist.
Yeah,
but it's also like more important. Like, how do you get people to want to help themselves? How do you lead the horse to water and force it to drink? Like,
I love those two questions because
they're the ones that I've got no answers for. Like,
you know what? I used to get really fixated on that second one. About people like wanting to help themselves, and I have this pattern of being a rescuer. Like my whole life's been about wanting to, can't they just? And I've had to really look at myself and go, why do I do that?
Yeah.
And I have ideas now why, but then someone said to me the other day, it's always a choice. You cannot force anybody to do anything that they're not willing to do. And you and I probably realise this. Like we had to take those first steps to help ourselves before those doors really opened in a way. It's like it's not the other way around, really.
Yeah, and that's something I'm struggling with at the moment, sort of with trying to still connect to people with where I'm at with my journey, because it's like, well, everything I'm doing now, I'm taking responsibility, I'm taking accountability for everything, even if there's stuff that's happened to me. It's like, okay, well, it's my responsibility to change it now and do something with it. So everything's a conscious choice. Everything's waking up each day and facing it and choosing which way I'm going.
Yep.
But when I was struggling all those years ago, like that was what I was hearing, but I just couldn't get there.
Totally get you.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't internalize it. But then I don't know. So if it's just the constant work, years and years and years down the track, it's just every little, like I feel like every bit of experience now, every little thing I've done has come to fruition and is aligning, and all that experience that you can't buy, it's there. And maybe it just takes some of us longer than others.
I feel that way too. Like I don't know the real answer either, but I do feel that there's layers. Like I feel like I couldn't have gone from A to Z just like that. Like I had to go through that layer and address that layer. And I also kind of feel like the body knows how much you can take in a way. It's like if I'd gone from A to Z,
100%.
I probably would have had a breakdown and ended up in a psych ward for like months. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like I had to take those baby steps.
And that's where like I firmly believe that your body will only let you experience what you can handle.
Yeah, it's pretty smart, huh?
Like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, and I feel like I didn't really, like, I've never really suppressed anything or repressed anything. I've kind of always been aware to the different things, but it was then I just couldn't, until I was able to work through that. Then I was seeing to the, like, then I could see what the next layer was. And
that
it's
is
like,
so true.
And it's kind of just like like obviously each layer you peel back, you then realize, oh, there's another 3 layers there, and then you peel it back, and it's like you start out with a 100-meter race.
Yeah.
You get 50 meters down the track, and now the finish line is twice as far away.
Yeah.
And then you get another 100 meters down the track, and now it's a 400-meter race. Like, wait, hang on, how come this track just keeps getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah.
And you've kind of, and then you've got to come to terms with the fact that, like, okay, this is life. It's just a constant evolution. There's no end point. You'll ever
Love
like,
it.
oh, I'm healed. It's like, no.
And I think that took me a long time to realise. Like, I think I had that mentality of like getting somewhere, getting to an end point, my end game, like ultimate manifestation, whatever. Like some way I just want to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And then to me that was almost a bit of avoidance too. Like not being, you spoke about this, being present, like not being able to just be present with where I'm at and not being fixated on the destination. And I'm really trying to enjoy the journey. And it's not always enjoyable. Like, it's just not. Like, let's be realistic. Mine's not. Like, And yeah, like when you spoke about suicide, like I'm very similar. Like I've never taken action, but I've definitely had moments where that voice in my head and the tears and going, I don't want to be here anymore. That voice, I don't want to be here. But a little voice on the other side going, keep going, keep going. Like the voices are both there, and sometimes the other one's more powerful. But that other one is just there to keep me going. And I often wonder with people like what that must feel like to not have that little voice strong enough anymore to actually.
And that's the thing, but that voice also might still be there, but it's just not loud enough. The other voice is just louder in that moment. And
I wonder that too, like,
and that's where like a lot of the suicide intervention stuff is just finding safety for now, until the next day, until the next week, until it's sort of passes, until you're in that little bit more lucid state where you can then do a little bit more work and just distance yourself again. And that's one of the best things I ever did was I did a suicide intervention skills training. It was actually like facilitated through a charity that's no longer running. So it was like an assist training. So and it was 2 day, like a 2 day intensive, like sort of 9 to 5. But it was learning how to actually intervene in someone trying to kill themselves, whether it's talk them down or palm them off to the right resources, and how to deal with that crisis situation. And because something was like, I've always felt as I was on my journey, I was happy to talk about my experiences, but I also knew other people had it differently, had it worse, had it more extreme. But I wanted to be able to connect and understand, or not always say the right things, but not say the wrong things. Because so much of what we hear is unhelpful language. But it was weird. That was the first time I feel like I was actually in a room full of people who got mental health, understood it, and were happy to talk about it. And it was just like talking about anything mental health related was just like talking about the weather. It was so calm, natural, and it was just like, oh, this is really nice, actually. This is just so like, is this what like being understood feels like?
Wow. Understood.
But it was also like the biggest thing they teach you is know your boundaries. Know how much you can take on. And it's like, because that's the thing, otherwise it becomes an intervention for 2 or for 3, and you just get dragged along with that person. And so that's like, for years I wondered if, like, I've always wanted to be a pro golfer and I've worked towards that, but there were times where I've wondered, okay, should I be thought about psychology or anything like that? But that weekend I realised, like, no, I could actually never be a therapist, because I'd take on everything too personally. And I don't think I can distance myself healthily enough.
That used to be me.
To actually do it full time. But like the skills I picked up, even just the myths with the suicide intervention, just like don't beat around the bush, just be able to connect, sit in the mud with them and use direct language. Like, are you planning to kill yourself? Have you got a plan? Like, it's just be direct. Don't. So many people are scared of, like, oh, if you don't mention suicide or else you'll put it in their head. It's like, you can't convince anyone of something they don't want to do.
That's so true.
And you can't put an idea in their head that's not already there. 100%. If they're at that point.
Isn't it interesting that we're actually scared of cutting to the chase sometimes? Like, it's this weird fear of really being vulnerable. And, you know, when you said feeling understood in that room, I think that's what everybody wants. Who doesn't want to feel understood and heard and seen and listened to? And it's interesting, like, sometimes I just wonder, like, how do we get here in society that we can't just communicate authentically about everyday issues that we're all facing without getting stuck in a story? And, you know, there's a difference between being stuck in a story and staying in this depression that we don't want to get out of. But a healthy way of just communicating and helping each other and holding space, basically.
Holding space, far out.
I know.
That's the thing. Like, people are right to be scared of these conversations when you don't have the skills and tools to actually handle it. And
that's true.
How to listen, how to hold space. People don't know how to do that. They listen and they're already thinking about the next thing they're going to say, and they completely miss what people have said. And it's like, oh, cool. Or it's in that culture of fixing things. So somebody says, oh, this is wrong, before people even ask, do you want comfort? Do you want support? Do you want solutions? what do you want? They'll go straight into, oh, you should do this, do this, do this. Like, it's just so much unwarranted.
Well, let's be honest, with most of my clients, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing much, you know? I'm like, and I realise that most people just want to be heard. They just want someone to hear them and acknowledge them and know that what they're expressing is valid, and they feel safe in expressing their emotions and how they feel. But yeah, you're right. It's like holding space is such a basic thing that we've forgotten.
Where are we taught it?
Not at school. I don't remember a class on holding space or even listening so much. You know, it might have been like a NAPLAN test of listening to some shit, you know, but like actually holding space for somebody's emotions is such a basic human need, you know?
Yeah. That's why I'm just such a massive fan of. There are so many programs out there now that are targeting that, and especially in adolescence in school, like
so good.
The Man Cave, Flourish Girl, Tomorrow Man, Tomorrow Woman, Tomorrow Architect, like all these things. Reach Foundation, like there's so many things out there that are trying to address that and teach emotional maturity. Even just teach people the nuance of communication and discussion and actually being able to sit and look at themselves. It's like, okay, well, being in a group of boys all like and banter culture and all this sort of stuff, it's like, well, actually just get them to step back and ask why are we doing this? What are you trying to achieve? Are you actually doing it because you believe it, or because it's just what everyone else is doing? Because that's where the beliefs come from. But if you actually can make them step back and ask why, it's like, oh, okay. And if like they actually have the ability to change it, open themselves up, and like and actually express or figure out what their values are, and have the space to do that.
I love that you said that about values too, because I don't even really remember learning much about what was really important to me and the belief stuff. Like I feel like, and this could have just been my journey, realising that I can question everything I'm told and taught. I do have that right to actually think, does this resonate with me? Is this the truth for me? What we're taught doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. Or real. There's a lot of people out there in the world that have ulterior motives that actually put money or power or greed or whatever above integrity, and that's just how it is. I think it probably goes back to connecting to yourself, doesn't it? Like knowing who you are and your values, and then it gets a bit easier, and staying in your own lane, really. That's what I learned the hard way. Just stay in your own lane.
And that's it. It's either stay in your own lane or stay in one lane. We can only do so much at one time. We only have so much energy.
That's so true.
It's not like we spread ourselves way too thin.
Energy depletion.
Trying to address everything at once. It's like, it's one bit at a time.
Yeah.
Brick by brick.
And even energy, like I feel like that's become a bit of a word that people are a bit more, kind of going back to what you said before about the words that we use that mean the same thing. Like when I talk about energy, some people are like, oh, that's a bit woo-woo and spiritual. I'm like, no, energy is just energy. Like it's everywhere. And understanding like the energy depletion and where we give our power away and where we leak energy and doing too much, that all depletes us on such a deep emotional level too, doesn't it? Like it's not a woo-woo spiritual thing. It's just a word that maybe is misconstrued.
And it's fun, and that's where you don't, if you're not listening, if you're not actually stopping and thinking about what you're doing, if you're reacting, you're not responding. Because there's a massive difference there. It's in that space. That's when you make your choices. That's when you hear what the other person is saying and you actually comprehend their words. So many times I've seen people arguing and it just gets louder and louder and nobody acknowledges what the other person says. Whereas if they did that, they'd realise they were actually arguing over the exact same thing, trying to get to the exact same point. But someone's trying to be right, someone's trying to have the power. There's just something else going on at play, and it's just like, well, but you just stop and listen and acknowledge. Repeat what the other person is saying, and you might realise, like, oh, we're actually on the same page here. Let's move on.
It's funny that, isn't it? It's like we make excuses sometimes just to almost have an argument or just want to be right. And I used to kind of have that trait a bit, wanting to be right, and now I'm like...
It's not even like be right, it's feel right.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And now it's like... And I think for me personally, it was about wanting to almost get validation that I knew myself, whereas really what I needed to do was just know that all I had to do was validate myself. To me, it was a lot of a childhood wound and wanting to still... Aren't you listening to me? Are you not hearing me? And now realising I don't need that so much anymore. So it's, I think trauma is a big part of lots of things too, that we're all like running around, scrambling through our trauma and our conditioning and like trying to like figure ourselves out and, you know, life and overwhelm and just trying to like ground in ourselves without and weeding out all the stuff that's blocking us.
And it's funny, I feel like trauma is one of those words that it's just, people don't go anywhere near it because it's like they haven't had the most extreme horrific things happen to them. But trauma can be someone cutting in front of you, it's all these, and it's like all about being seen, being heard, and the smallest thing, like you can't justify how big or small an experience is. Like something shit happened, it happened.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whatever, but the internal experience can be just as big as something for another person that's completely different.
So true. It's funny how we get scared by that. I actually had a client the other day and she was reminding me of myself. She got really upset. She's like, it just reminds me of when I was at primary school and one of my friends was really mean to me, and she kind of pieced together something happening in her life right now that is really upsetting her. And it's crazy how something that can happen in the playground at school will affect you for the rest of your life until you actually acknowledge it.
Or even for good and bad, you hear of people who say, like, oh, this teacher said, oh, your writing's really good, you could be a writer one day, and then you end up being an author. And vice versa, you get a sports coach say you're terrible, you're no good, and you get kicked out of the team, and then you never play the sport again. Like,
I love that.
I feel like words are the real magic in this world.
Yeah.
Because they can express so many different things.
Yeah.
That communication is kind of all we've got to translate it.
And words are so powerful. Have you seen that the rice experiment? You've probably heard of it. They put rice in water. They have 3 cups of rice, and to one of the cups of rice, they say all these really nice words every day, like "You're amazing," "You're beautiful," "You're powerful."
Yes.
Then the second one, they say "You're horrible," "You're terrible," just all these horrible words. And the third one, I think it's just, I don't think they say anything, or it's just neutral. The one that was negative actually turns mouldy.
Yeah.
There's so many different experiments out there like that,
and that's I've seen people myself do that at home with flowers or anything, like with water sitting there.
Yeah.
It absolutely is real.
And I think that's a good point to remember, isn't it, with depression and with our mental health, our self-talk, our internal dialogue, like really working on that. It can be easier said than done, particularly if we've had years of negativity thrown at us and we've absorbed it, and then it's almost like we have to release all that old gunk to bring in the new stuff. We have to constantly work on those 2 voices, don't we? And like you said before, sometimes they never really go away. They're always there, but we need to just retrain ourselves. And the power of language. It's
funny, and I feel like as well, it always comes back to how much you're responsible, because the self-talk is always so negatively geared. Even myself, like last month, I was in a men's group, and I had questions asked at me, and they were positively framed, like, what has been going well lately? And I was in a bad state that day, and I found a way to still talk about, in the first sentence, 3 things that were going wrong or weren't that good or could have been better. And I was just literally just been asked only, what is going well? And I couldn't say something, this is going well.
Yep.
I wasn't allowing myself to see that.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think sometimes, because we spoke a bit about toxic positivity before too, and that's not toxic, what you just said, sorry.
Yeah.
Just reminded me of that. It's like we need to focus on the good and have gratitude, but we also need to be okay with the days that we're not so good, and be okay with processing that and understanding that. I kind of believe that sometimes we're in that place because we need to release something, there's something coming up, bubbling to be released, but having the tools around us to go back to the positive, or knowing that, maybe sometimes I might sit with that negative whatever energy for 20 minutes if I can, but then have, okay, what am I going to do after that? Not to bypass it, but go, what can I do? I might go for a walk, or I might, do some meditation, have my self-care tools so I can also find that peace and gratitude, but not dismiss my emotions. Don't put a band-aid over it and go, oh no, that's okay, I won't feel that. That never gets me anywhere, honestly, for me personally.
I feel like it's that distance between the thought and the action response. That's where your sort of superpower is. Yeah. Because that's when you can try to process it, try to understand it before doing anything. Yeah. And that's what I feel like I really struggled with when I was younger. It was just I just always reacting. I couldn't
sit with it.
Yeah, and I couldn't then reframe it in another way. I've always been a logical mind, and so even times where I could maybe think of a different logical solution or behaviour or something I should do, but not having any sort of connection with it emotionally or physically. It's but that doesn't change how I'm feeling, or it's just but what's the point, or just whatever it is. I couldn't sort of connect the dots between the logic and then the emotional as well.
I love that you said that, because it's so important to have that balance, isn't it? Like emotion and logic, and realizing that emotions are kind of really delusionary sometimes. They can really throw us off, but they're there for a reason. Like, they're valid, and like, we have to process what's underneath them. But if we lose that logic, we can get really imbalanced. Yeah. I think that's what I used to do too, actually. Not be able to almost rise above it, like be in it, but not be it, like just be with it and rise above it. But go, okay, I'm processing this and I need to go through it, and it's part of my journey, but I don't have to be... I used to get stuck in states, like really... I remember the year, like 2017, I was in a really bad shame period. I didn't actually know what I was feeling. No one had actually... I was like starting to really understand my emotions then. That was like when I was like, what the hell am I feeling? And shame is a pretty shitty emotion to feel. It's very heavy. I didn't have the tools to process. It's like at that point in time, I got stuck in the emotion, and it's like I became the emotion. It's like I felt like it was never going to go away. It's like I felt like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm feeling, and it's never going to go away. It might sound really silly, but I think for me, it was like that turning point of understanding, oh my God, emotions are just energy. I need to just feel this, and I need to just allow myself to feel it, but almost start to rise above it and just almost get more curious and go, oh, okay, this is what it feels to feel shame. Okay, I've got to release it. And then from then on, I started to play around a bit with different emotions, and I might do that through dance or yoga. Like, I might put on a song that makes me feel sad and like really feel sadness, then feel like going to an emotion that's happy, and kind of understand that we are constantly energetically going through different emotional states. I don't think it's abnormal to feel sad. It's just part of our human experience. It's just knowing that it's going to pass.
100%. It's the old yin and yang, light and dark. Like, you need the good to understand the bad. You need the bad to feel the good. You need those opposites on the spectrum. If everything was just consistent and neutral the whole time, it's just...
Might be pretty boring, I think.
100%. That sort of like circles back to the medication for me a little bit as well. It felt like everything was quite neutral.
Yeah.
And like, it allowed me to realise, like, okay, my expectations were actually too high though as well. Yeah, for ages I was... thought that like happiness was the goal to get out of the depression and the depressive states, but it was really like being content in the neutral is sort of where you need to be, but then to be able to go above that and enjoy it and go below that and process it and handle it and come back to the content, and then just being in any given moment, am I okay? Do I need anything right now? Do I have to do I need to be anywhere? No, I can just be here and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that was, like that shift was when it was also when I knew I was ready to get off the medication and start feeling again. Because like, okay, I can do this now. Like, this is, I know where I need to get to, but I actually wanted to start feeling again. And that means feeling the bad stuff deeply as well. But I've always been someone who deeply feels and always wanted to. And now it feels great to be back doing it again.
That's so amazing. And I love that you said that about feeling, because I feel like that's what makes us human. And when we can connect to our feelings, like so much you see and feel so much beauty in the world. Personally, I feel like you just connect to such on a deeper level to things and people and experiences. It's like it's an energetic door that kind of opens up, and I just feel like it's so important. Numbing out is closing a lot of things off.
Yep, and there's definitely like times when you need it so that you can. It's almost like you've got 5 things going on, and it just dulls it back to the one.
Yep.
So then you can just piece your way through it.
Yep.
But then also, trying not to be on it forever so that I could live fully.
I like it goes back to, I think, what you said before about taking the baby steps, like not rushing, like you said, from being if you're in a really overwhelming depressive state and so much shit's going on in your life and you really feel like you need it, then because if you went from that space to full on feeling everything, it could actually kill you. It actually could kill you. Like 100%. Your emotions really can, well, we know, we've talked about the whole... the illness showing you that you're off kilter or your body's out of whack. And, if you don't process your emotions, they can actually make you really sick. So, It's funny, like, even with, like, one of the best things I've done this year was mirror work. Yeah. And literally just, like, started out as eye gazing with myself for 30 seconds. Yeah. That was the most uncomfortable thing. Totally here.
Because, like, didn't like the way I looked. Yeah. Didn't like that, like... I could see that I look this way because of my actions, or I've done this because of that in the past, and it was all just unraveled, and it was also why I didn't want to look at it and deal with it, because I don't like all those decisions, or I could see everything in the past, but it's not until you actually face up to it and then even amongst it, it was like I basically did it for 30 days straight, but it was no matter what, like I had to just do it for at least 30 seconds. And I would always end up doing longer, but I'd have to identify something different about myself physically that I like. And it could have just been, oh, I like my eyebrows, I like my beard. It was the tiniest things to begin with, because it was genuinely didn't like everything else.
Totally.
But then just it forced me to start looking at myself.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was connecting deeply. As I was doing it, my posture would change. I'd start breathing a lot deeper. I'd start feeling things. Like back to something I'd do at golf. Like it was amazing. I just became aware of my body again.
I love that.
When I first started, it was almost like when I'd try and look at myself and there was like this void around me where my eyes would just want to dart off, go look at something else in the room.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't sit and stare at myself, but
I can so relate to everything you just said.
Yeah.
And what I didn't piece together, which just like a light bulb moment for me, was when you said that when you looked, it reminded you of what you did, your actions and your past. It just, that just hit, thank you, that hit me like a ton of bits, because I found it so hard initially to look at myself, and a lot of self-hatred stuff for me. But I never pieced together why, and that was really helpful for me to hear, because I feel like mirror work is so powerful. It's so simple, but it's so powerful, but it can be so difficult in the beginning. It's like you look and you're like, I don't like this person. I do not like you. I don't want to look at you, you know? Yeah. And when you get to a point where you're like, oh, I actually don't mind you, you're okay. Like if you start to change, and your energy actually changes. Like you can feel the shift, and other people can feel the shift too. It's so real. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I get people tell me now, like I literally look different to even what I was 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And even now I can see it as well. It's like, like I have actually, something has changed.
It just makes you realise like, our internal energy and how we view ourselves and what we hold on to, how much it actually affects us. It's so deep. Yeah.
And that's where it's funny, like with like my golf career, it feels like I've been doing it for so many years now, and like I'm 28. It seems like if I'm comparing to everyone else, it's like, oh, I should be on tour by now, I should be doing this, or it's getting to the point where, okay, I've got to decide to do something else now, I've got to have another career. It's like, well, A, that's all bullshit as well. But it's the narratives that you hear everywhere. But it's like, I can now see why I haven't been successful. Yeah. I can now see all the reasons it didn't work. I can see the things I was doing that were wrong for me that didn't feel right. I can actually understand. It's like, oh, well, I feel like I've actually got a chance now. Yeah,
and what an amazing thing. I really am a believer that everything happens. We go through what we go through. We grow through what we go through, and we go through what we have to. But we can also halt ourselves and avoid things as well. It's like that balance, isn't it, of like doing the work and not having shame or feeling like we're behind. And I know I've definitely been through that. And I still have days where I go through that. I'm not going to lie. 100%. I still think, fuck, I should be doing this by now. I've got to slap myself and go, don't go back to that mentality. You know, I'll waste my time enumerating on things and I'm like, wow, I'm just wasting my time. Like my energy is going to the past. Keep moving forward. And
that's like with what I'm working on at the moment. I'm literally facing that every single day, but it's like, okay, well, I can either continue down that path and not do anything, not achieve anything, or I can get back to what I'm doing that might make a difference, might make everything better. Yeah. We'll see how we go.
Yeah. And a lot of it is self-belief, isn't it? And
self-worth and self-love.
So
like,
true.
Everything comes back to that. It's so cliche that it's like, always comes back to, oh, I'm not good enough in something.
Yep. Yeah.
But that's what it is at the end of the day.
100%. Like the unworthiness thing is so big. And that's been my biggest block too. And even though fear is a big one, I feel like underlying the fear is the reason of but I can't succeed, I'm not good enough. It's still underneath all of that.
If you were good enough, you wouldn't be scared of doing it because you felt good enough. It's
fear of failure. Why? Because I don't know if I can do it. Like, it's all about being worthy, really. Yeah.
But it's also, it's so, like, you hear it all the time because it is cliches. You hear them all the time because they're right.
It's true. But
like you said, you can't just jump straight to that because you've got to understand all the different aspects that you don't feel worthy, that you don't feel like enough, and you've just got to do it one thing at a time. Yeah. Okay, we can change something here. Let's do that. See how that goes. See what that then shows for the next thing, and you'll get there when you get there. Unfortunately, as long as you are actively putting in some work.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message to for people and for myself. to persist, like to not give up on yourself. And even though you feel like maybe sometimes you're going one step forward, 10 steps back, 10 steps forward, one step back, and you feel like you're not going anywhere, it's almost like you just got to keep playing away at the layers. Like you just got to keep going. And I remember a stage where I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. I can't, what the hell? Why can't I move forward? And, you know, and I know there's still plenty of layers to go, but I know I have moved. And I think it's just focusing on how far you come, isn't it, sometimes?
Oh, like, absolutely.
The baby steps you've taken.
And it's like one of my favourite quotes is always, it's like one of that scene in Rocky where he's like talking about, oh, it ain't about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. And there's a little line at the end where it's like, if you know what you're worth, and go out and get what you're worth.
That's so true.
Like, life doesn't owe us anything.
Yeah.
We're not owed anything. We don't deserve anything, but we also deserve everything.
Yeah.
But if you sit there and think you're owed something, it's not how it works.
No.
And it's hard to tolerate, because there are some people who seem to get things when they don't deserve things and have that narcissistic or arrogant attitude. It seems like they're living the life and they're not really doing anything to get it, but it'll come back to affect them at some point, or it'll go wrong at some point in their life, and they won't have the skills to deal with it, or they're just putting on a facade and you don't actually know how much they're struggling underneath already. Like, that's
a really good point.
You have no idea.
I believe that too. I believe you can't skip chapters, and you can't skip lesson, you can't skip your healing. It's all part of it. And it's almost like, I'm saying this because I need to hear it too, it's almost like we see that as like an obstacle, like, oh, I've got to do this, oh my God, it's so hard. But that's actually where the gold is, like actually that alchemy process, and getting to know yourself and getting to know your weaknesses and the changes that you make, it kind of worth more than what you're wanting to achieve in a way for me now.
And that's and it's all about, like, again, the old cliche, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah,
like,
cliche is true.
Yeah, it's like the journey is the life. That's your daily task, your daily actions. The outcome, the destination, it's a fleeting moment.
So true.
And like, if you're not enjoying everything else you're doing, it's a big payoff. Like,
it's almost an escapist mentality, like, oh, I just want to get here, not being able to sit with the process and the people you meet and the conversations you have, and it's beautiful, actually.
The best example I can feel like is I'd love to sit down and talk with Usain Bolt. He spends 4 years working towards each Olympics for a 10-second race.
Wow, that puts it into perspective.
He spends how many other seconds working towards 10 seconds? If it's all about the outcome, he gets to enjoy that for how long does the medal presentation go for? 2 minutes?
I love that.
And then it's working towards the next one. So if he wasn't enjoying the journey and enjoying the daily training and everything else and everything that's happening to him as a character, as a person, who in their right mind would do that?
It's almost like it's just a byproduct, isn't it? Sometimes the end result, it's like a reward, but I really feel like when you get those rewards, you really appreciate more the work you've done to get there than the actual end result. I look back on things I've achieved, and when I wasn't in the best place and I still achieved amazing things for me, I still almost couldn't really appreciate them as much as I would have liked to, because I hadn't done enough inner work to really even be in the moment, even when I was there, if that makes sense.
100%. Like, how many people achieve things and it's like, because it's
next.
Yeah, and it's like, well, something they don't really care about, or it's for someone else's dream or anything like that. And then they, like, on paper, the resume, the CV looks good. Yeah. But then they'll change job to something they actually like doing, and they'll be much happier. It's like,
so true. And some of the happiest people I know, everyone's different to what they desire, and everyone's, wants what they want. But some of the happiest people I know are the ones who actually live quite simply, but they just have such a sense of inner peace and can appreciate the simple things. And I find there's something that I really resonate with, and I think that's something that I feel is really important for me, just to be able to appreciate life as it is, not so much aspire to get there or be here. And it's great to have dreams and goals. I'm not putting that down, like, that's amazing, but if you can't just appreciate life, then what do you have?
You're just missing out on everything else it could be.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think the more open-minded you are to new opportunities too, the better. Like, sometimes I used to get very fixated on a specific outcome, and then it wouldn't happen. I'm like, oh my God. But then, like, all these opportunities are there going, Holly, you're looking that way and that way. There's other ways to go. Like, why are you just going... That's my ego. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, don't we all love having a good ego?
Love my ego.
So it's funny. We've all got egos. We've all got shadows.
Yeah, 100%. And it's being compassionate about that too, isn't it? And I used to find that hard, but that's because I didn't have compassion for my own ego. And it's coming back to, like you said before, self-love and accepting all parts of yourself, which is easier said than done.
Oh, 100%. I feel like one of the most important things that I discovered, and I sort of keep going back to with the HOPE Manifesto, is like rock bottom was the solid foundation that I've built from.
I love that. I bet you so many people would relate to that too.
Like, it's literally like the concrete foundations on a skyscraper. Like, it's just, and now I'm just adding level after level after level. But it's that I kind of needed, like, I almost had to go to rock bottom to know I could survive it, and so I'm not scared of it ever again.
Yeah.
Even it's funny, like I say that now, and I'm also scared of everything I'm doing at the moment. Like, it's just like all these fears popping up, but it's like I can reason through it, knowing, okay, I've been through worse, I've been through the lows before. I know I can get through it. I know I'll bounce back. It's weird. Like I hate hearing everything happens for a reason, but
I say that too.
Everything happens for a reason if we give it a reason.
Yeah, that's so true. There's always a reason for why it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lesson to learn in everything, and you just got to keep going deep. Just ask why. Ask why this, why that.
Yeah, why is a great word.
Yeah, but doing it when you're ready.
Yeah.
When you've got find a support.
Yeah.
There's plenty of good people out there. I feel like the more that I've found, the easier it was to find them. It's just that law of attraction sort of thing. Like, they just seem to all of a sudden gravitate towards me.
Yeah, it's pretty magical, isn't it?
And it's like so many of the people I know and that I'm leaning on now didn't know they existed 12 months ago. Isn't
it beautiful when you're on that journey and you start to realise that the deeper you work on yourself and, you know, the life's there to support you. Like, people are there to support you, and I think that's great what you said about the foundation. I think a lot of people need to hear that rock bottom, because I almost feel like so many of us go to that space to almost remember how strong we are to rise from the ashes again and hopefully learn the lessons that God has said.
Yeah. Far out. There's so many little nuggets I've just learned over there, and they just keep popping in and out of my head. It's like, I feel like rock bottom was important.
Yeah.
And then taking leaps of faith.
Yeah.
Because literally everyone is waiting for the other person to do that. We're all like, I'll be vulnerable and honest when they do it first.
That is so true.
When, like, we're all looking for that safety, for that confirmation.
Yeah.
It's even just talking to a stranger. Somebody's got to say hello first.
Yeah.
You've got to take that leap of faith, and it's amazing what's on the other side.
So true. It's like, what are we scared of, really?
Yeah.
What are we really scared of?
Yeah. And the best things happen when there's no expectations apart from being in that moment. Don't try and stuff it into a box, into a certain shape. Just let it be whatever it's going to be.
Yep.
And that's with career, with friendships, families, relationships, everything. Just remove more and more of the expectations and just let it be and enjoy going with it and understanding the nuance and appreciating it all, and appreciating the complexity to it all.
Yeah, a lot of life is about, I feel like, letting go of expectation, isn't it? And just to sum up or to finish off, grief is a big part of depression. I really believe that we label depression, grief as depression. I think grief is, there's layers to grief.
Oh, well, that's where it used, what was it, in like Lost Connections goes into it again in the book. Like, what was it? There's two, like, for a while there, they tried to create two different types of depression, endogenous, and I can't remember now. But it was like, one was like, it was like the grief exception was in the DSM. But it's like, oh yeah, you're depressed, but only for, like, then they tried to put a limit on, but yeah, if it's been 4 weeks, 6 weeks or something, and you're feeling it after a certain event, that's understandable and everything, but then after that certain point, all of a sudden it becomes the pathology again. I was like, wait, but hang on, what? It just...
I don't think there can be a time on our emotions and our processing, and I don't know,
Exactly.
But I believe we're all different. Like, I'm a very sensitive person, and I know myself better. I take a while to process. Some people are really quick, and I get shitty with myself, like, God, why do you take so long? But that's just who I am. Like, I take time, and then I like to think it through, and I think because I'm a counsellor, that's just who I am, and it helps me understand myself, and it helps with other people. So I'm not going to just sit there and go, I'm too slow anymore. That's just what I do. And if you don't like it, then bugger off. Like,
oh, exactly. And it's like, I know I'm someone who is very particular with how I articulate myself because I don't want to be misunderstood. And like, I know there's a lot of, I've been misunderstood in the past, or I've said something and it gets taken the wrong way, but it's like, okay, well, I always internalize it as, okay, it's kind of like my fault, I should have said it differently, or things like that. But that's who I am, so I know I'm going to take longer to respond at times, especially the more heated the situation is, the longer I'm going to want to take before I say anything. And but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just who I am. So I've just got to work with it.
No boxes, like you said, like no molds. So we're all different, and I feel like embracing who we are can be easier to some than others. I don't know. Yeah, accepting who we are is a big thing in life, when a lot of us are conditioned to think that this is the way we should live and this is the way we should work and be, and finding our feet can be difficult sometimes if we've had that deep conditioning and, like you said, family patterns and survival mode and all that stuff. It's unraveling. It's a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much for actually agreeing to this podcast. And it's funny, like when I met you, when we had that deep conversation pretty quickly, I remember walking away going, oh, I think I need to talk to that guy more. Yeah. And then I think I started the podcast soon after, and I kept thinking of you. I'm like, Yeah. So thank you. I'm so glad that we could have this chat, and so much of what you do I really think is amazing, and I really resonate with, I guess, your take and your experiences on mental health. And yeah, really appreciate you sharing the personal things to you. And yeah, thank you.
Definitely want to thank you for just holding space today to have this conversation. And it's amazing how it's just connection. It was like just so quick, easy, but it's just so real, and it's amazing what can flow from that. But thank you so much just for holding the space to be able to talk and share this today.